All right, good morning. So we're going to look at quadratic formula today. And so it is this nice, amazing formula right here. If you are taking a look at it, notice that you are solving for x, so you're getting an x-intercept. You remember that that can also be called a root or a zero or a solution. There's lots of names for the same thing, just like slope. So when we go to look at the quadratic formula, we do have to have it in the standard form of our ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0. And we want it this form because we need to know what is our a, our b, and our c. So if we take a look at our example a little bit further down, so it says that we have x squared plus 2x equals 3. We're going to have to rewrite it, remember, because we want it to be equal to 0. So after we subtract the 3 to the other side, we start with this one. Okay, and now we can see that our a is 1, our b is 2, and then it gives us our c is -3. When we go to actually plug into our formula, they rewrite our formula right here. We're just simply plugging in. Our b value is 2, and it goes into 2 different places, okay? And then we have our a and our c value here and here, and then it's divided by 2 times a. Okay, just be sure you look at that formula as you're filling it in and make sure you're filling it in correctly. And if you notice, and it's kind of tiny, but let me go back up here to the top, you do have that whole plus minus symbol that you learned last week and what that exactly means. So by the time we multiply your inside of your square root sign here, we would get 16. And you know that the square root of 16 is 4, and that then they separate it. Notice how that's a plus sign and that's a minus sign there. So you get your 2 answers. All right, so that one worked out really, really nicely because the square root of 16 is a perfect square. So let's look at example 2. It's already written in our nice form that we need. It's already set equal to 0. So if you notice now, our a is 1 from up here because there is no number in front, and the b is -6. Be sure you take that minus sign with it. And the same for c, it's -2. That minus sign comes along. When you go to plug in, if you look at your formula, it's -b. Well, -6, you could write that down, but it is just going to make it a +6. And that's why right here at the beginning, when we plug in, we have a +6. And then, of course, then we keep using our -6 because it says just b squared minus 4 times a times c. We plug in our values. And if you notice that our square root sign, if we do all that in the calculator, it does give you 44. So we can't square root the 44 nicely. So what we'll do is kind of keep it as the square root of 44 and work it out just like what they wrote down here. We have 1 with a plus sign and 1 right here with a minus sign. And then we get our 2 answers, so 6.3 and -0.3. So let's look at doing one together, or maybe 2 together. Let me write our formula. All right, so here's our formula written again. So we have -b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, and all of it is going to be divided by 2a. So yes, it's a bunch to remember. However, on your STAR test, your end of course exam in May, it will be on the formula sheet. So that's an easy way. You don't have to remember it. They are very nice and they give it to you. So let's first look at here on number 1, what is our a, our b, and our c? Our a value is 1. Our b value is -3. And our c value is 2. Okay, when we go to plug in, we have x equals, we want -b, right? -3, and I'll condense that in just a second, plus or minus the square root of b squared. I'm going to put it in parentheses, b, which is my -3 squared, and then minus 4 times my a value is 1 and my c value is 2. Extend my square root sign. And it's going to be all divided by 2 times a, which a is 1, but I'm still going to show you how I plug in right there. So could we simplify this down further before we get started? Absolutely. You could change this. Let me see if I have an eraser. I could change this to be my positive 3 because negative 3 is a positive. Okay, and that's about what I could do. Maybe even 2 times 1 we know is 2. So maybe we could, boy, that did not erase, did it? There we go. Okay, well, we're not going to worry about it then. We'll put a 2 here. All right, so what we want to do is you can use your calculator, you can use Desmos, but we want to find out what is the square root of negative 3 squared minus 4 times 1 times 2. You can also work it in your head, so that's what I'm going to do. Negative 3 times negative 3 is 9, so keep that in mind. 4 times 1 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8. So what is 9 minus 8? All right, and you get 1. So we have 3 plus or minus the square root of 1 over 2. Now the square root of 1, if you do that in your calculator, we're actually just going to leave it as square root of 1 because it gives you a nice long decimal. So what do we get for our answers? Let me go to Desmos. Okay, so we're going to scooch over here to Desmos, and we have 3 plus the square root of 1, and we're going to divide it by 2. So I should have put all that in parentheses. Let me do that now. And I'm going to divide by 2. And you get 2 as your answer. So that's one of our answers here. Let me get my pen. X equals 2. And the second one, oh, let me get my mouse. All right. Is the square root of 3 minus the square root of 1. And it is divided by 2. And we get 1 for our answer. There's our 2 answers. Guys, y'all can have 2 answers, 1 answer, or no answers, okay? And we'll talk about that later, though. Okay. Let's do this next example. So in this next example, we do have to move this negative 16 to the left-hand side. So I am going to have to add 16, right? That's the opposite. So now I get, okay, so we get x squared minus 8x plus 16. So we know our a value here. Let me write it in a different color. Here's our a value. Our b value is negative 8, and our c value is 16. Let's plug in. So x equals a negative 8 is a positive 8 plus or minus the square root. We have negative 8 squared because that's b squared. Okay. Minus 4. A is 1. C is 16. And it's going to be divided by 2 times 1, which, right, we can write it, or you can just write 2. All right, so negative 8 times negative 8 is 64. And 4 times 16 is also 64. 64 minus 64, they would just totally cancel out. Square root of 0, yeah, just I mean, you can we do square root of 0? Oh, let's hide that. Get it under my square root sign there. And it's 0. I don't know if any of y'all have ever done that before, but okay. Anyway, so it just kind of goes away, right? It becomes 0. And then you have 2 down here. So really it's 8 plus 0 divided by 2 and 8 minus 0 divided by 2, which is still just 8 divided by 2. So you have one answer, and that is 4. That means it only crosses your axis one time. Okay, what it could possibly look like is this. Okay, it touches one time. Oh, let me write down this other example. I just realized, sorry, that should have been a 1, not a 2. You have a 1 and a 2 there. Okay. Oh, that's really horrible. Let me just erase it and write it again. Okay. Sidetracked. All right, so that's all you're doing. You're simply plugging in your A, your B, and your C. And if you have questions, please email myself or Mr. Jewel, and we'll answer those for you. But really plug in those A, B, and C. Work out the square root part first, because that's probably the easiest part to work out. If it's a perfect square, it makes it even easier for you. If it's not, leave it under the radical like we did here in this example, where we left it the square root of 1. And when we went to Desmos, it does the work for us, or your yellow calculator, your TI calculator can do it too. But again, yeah, if you need help, please let us know through email. Go join our Google Meet, and y'all have a good rest of your day.